I'm well into my corporate career and completely burned out from constant layoffs, reorganizations, and trying to build trust and confidence with my team despite everything going on around us. I see people like the two of you who've built portfolio careers and wonder if I could do the same. But I have a mortgage and kids. How do you know when you've had enough to save up to make the leap? And what if I'm not as ambitious or satisfied without the big corporate energy?
Well, you're asking all the right questions for sure. First off, I think that you owe it to yourself to address a little bit of the burnout. And I think regardless of what you do next, like you do not want to be taking the burnout energy with you. And while I respect your belief that you have burnout because of the weight that comes from a corporate job, I encourage you to give yourself a little bit more agency over that. And what I mean by that is most of the time it's the gap between your expectations and the reality that is the problem. And so I would encourage you to ask yourself, are your expectations somewhat unrealistic, and why would that be? Like, were you not really reading the full situation of the reality of your current situation? And I think that's important because whatever you do next will have both ups and downs. And so being a little bit honest with yourself about where the hard bits are and where the fun bits are, I think sets you up for better management of your energy, which is the key to everything. So I think that is important. But as it relates to a portfolio life, and I will let Amy talk a little bit more about this because she's the master of this, and I'm a little bit behind her on that.
Yeah.
I will say that you're absolutely asking the right questions, having a really good handle on what your non-negotiable costs are, what your real costs are, is an important part of it. And I would give myself a running start into moving to portfolio. You will notice I took my board seat a couple years before I stepped out of full-time corporate. And so I already had some things in motion as it related to doing more portfolio type work. But it isn't anywhere close. I mean, you have to cover your own healthcare, you have to cover, expenses at full cost. And, so you really are making a very different economic choice. And it's, tied to what do you want your lifestyle to be, and what do you want where do you want to spend your energy, and where do you want to give your contribution? Which gets to the last part of your question, which is, am I going to have enough substance in a portfolio life that really helps me feel that I'm contributing to my fullest level? And again, I think this is where spending time to map out how do you want to contribute and what do you want that to look like will matter a lot. Because for me, I do struggle with this. I need a lot of engagement and a lot of intellectual stimulation. And so things like starting a podcast were great places for me to put my energy. But without that, I would probably be feeling a lot more strain on that side. So I think you can create those things for yourself in different ways and different modalities, but they're not going to happen accidentally. So having a really good inventory of where you and how you want to spend your time, and what is the right balance, and how would you know? What would it feel like? What would it look like if you were at the right balance for you? And again, no one can answer these questions for you. You have to answer them for yourself. But these all are pieces to that question. So I will let Amy talk a little bit about the financial planning side of it. And
Yeah, I get these kind of questions a lot, and they come in the form of like, well, are you satisfied? Are you bored? Like, is it enough? So that's one. And then the other is like, oh gosh, I wish I could do that, but I just like, it's really scary because of healthcare, because of college tuition, et cetera, right? So, and those are real reasonable fears. And so, first off, in terms of the financial security, we've talked about that a lot. And yeah, you need to feel financially secure, but there are ways to do that. So there are ways to, save aggressively, while you're in the corporate environment, and you can save in things like, your HSA to, counteract healthcare costs later. We do still have ACA, so it is possible to not have a job and have health care and not be yet 65 years old. So that is possible. Now, it's also possible that ACA could go away. So that's very scary. But, is it a situation where you'll never have a job again? Like, could you still contribute to society in a different way and have the door open to a corporate job later on? So these are things that you need to be thinking about. But regardless, I would say save aggressively, save for HSA, things like, all of those things that could make this possible for yourself, right? That being able to have the choice is the best psychological thing that you can do. Now, in terms of, gosh, would I be bored? I'm an ambitious person. What would I be without my big job? And this was something that I pondered quite a bit, actually, because, more than anything, I felt like my purpose was to lead, to be a role model, to, create successful, cohesive teams that deliver great outcomes, and to mentor and support people coming up into the world. And doing that in a big job with a giant team and lots of big outcomes was a great way to do it. But it wasn't the only way to do it. And so, it took a little bit of figuring out for me whether I really could bring that purpose to in other directions. And I'm happy to say that I can. So, first of all, I have my product desires and my wanting to do product strategy, to, get my hands dirty and build stuff. And it's a super fun time, actually, because there's vibe coding. So I can do vibe coding, and I've got my advisory clients that I can work with. And so that's super fun. But of course, that's separate from my purpose, which is around bringing up people. And so I think like the podcast and our ability to do these leadership corners, to have, regular mentoring conversations. Like, one of the reasons why we did these leadership corners really was because Meg and I are often pinged by, former colleagues and employees and people that we know to go to lunch and have a little career chat. So that was kind of why we did these, because we thought that it could be a little bit more universally useful. So I find lots of purpose and lots of possibility. To wrap up, I would say, give yourself the financial security that you need to be able to make the choices. If you find yourself either, getting laid off or in some sort of position where you kind of have to do something different, please believe in yourself that this is a great thing to do. It's not, it's not a bad thing. Like it's a huge opportunity for you to actually live your purpose and do it in a way that is right for you.
I definitely want to double down on bet on yourself. You believe in yourself and your ability to do it. And then maybe read the book, Everything is Figure Outable, and decide if it's important for you, then figure it out, because you can do that.
And maybe the book Ikigai, about the Japanese concept of purpose.